Good morning and welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me at the MarketSite is Anoop Nannra. He is the Global Head of Blockchain over at Cisco, and we're going to take a look at applying the technology to building out a better enterprise. Anoop, it's great to have you with me in New York. It's been a long time since we caught up in DC, and as you and I always say, we could talk about blockchain all day, every day, but for the newer folks coming on, understanding the technology, give us a broad overview of what it is.
So most folks recognize blockchain from its inception in 2008 through a white paper and some software that was created by this mysterious character called Satoshi Nakamoto. And kind of our interpretation of what was written there and the code that was produced was blockchain is a technology, it's a gear and a mechanism for identifying and driving how does a network achieve a common understanding of state of objects within that network. Now, it could be a network of individuals, a network of enterprises, a network of machines, and the objects could be everything from cryptocurrencies to just plain documents. And so what we're seeing here is kind of the expansion from the original days of back in 2008 around cryptocurrencies to how do we apply this to essentially and eventually into the machine-to-machine economy.
Right, I mean, to every sector, not simply just capital markets or digital currency. Absolutely. So how is blockchain revolutionizing the way the world is doing business? Is it making companies more cost-effective, more efficient in terms of their processes and so forth? Why should we start adopting this technology?
So I think one of the biggest benefits that blockchain can actually bring is driving automation of business process, and doing so in an environment where we're naturally ecosystems, right? So when we look at the technology and we looked at how Cisco could be actually using the technology, we recognize that we're actually an ecosystem. Every time that we acquire a company, we're not just acquiring a company, we're acquiring an entire ecosystem. So how do we drive transparency around that? How do we drive continuous visibility around the state of the assets, whether it's goods, products, and services? And how do we actually deliver that to customers? And how do we actually maintain the entire end-to-end value chain? So it's a very interesting opportunity where we look at not just a very kind of product by product kind of opportunity, but rather how do we actually ensure the efficacy of an entire value chain from when products go from raw materials to finished goods.
It's interesting you keep bringing up the word ecosystem. How challenging is it to get companies on board to basically revamp everything that they've been doing and rewrite their ecosystems?
Yeah, so I think one of the misconceptions that we have in the blockchain space is that blockchain will fix everything. And that's most definitely not true. Blockchain, I think, is very much complementary to a lot of the existing systems. So one of the challenges that we're seeing in the blockchain space is how do you take this new technology and integrate it effectively and simply into an existing IT system, right? So the question is how do we manage the onboarding of data? How do we manage that? How do we manage the identity of applications, devices, machines, individuals, and actually connect that in a cohesive layer that is kind of bound together by blockchain?
If you look at 5, 10, even 20 years, do you think industries across the board are going to have to adopt blockchain technology somewhere within their enterprise?
I think they have to, and I think a lot of ecosystems are actually starting to do that, right? So in our example, we've actually built a blockchain solution and have actually deployed it. And what we're finding is that our ecosystem is attracted to that. They're attracted to the idea of having more transparency, more visibility across the ecosystem for what they do and how they actually participate in our network. And so the value here is we're actually potentially seeing an expansion of how we actually drive more growth within our ecosystem.
Well, it's a really unique opportunity to get the head of global blockchain from Cisco at the MarketSite. If you can give us some insight into what is Cisco's framework like? What are you most excited about?
So we've built a blockchain platform. We've been involved in the blockchain space for about 4 years now. And we've been playing a very cautious approach to the technology. Actually always questioning, does this actually deliver value? And so when we started on our journey, we started looking at this through the lens of cryptocurrencies, what's happening on Wall Street, and then actually expanding that into further, how do we actually drive machine-to-machine economies? How do we drive the intersection of blockchain and IoT as an example? And so going through that process, we actually dissected the company functionally and said, what are the areas that would be of interest if we were to consume blockchain technology? So we landed on supply chain, and we went after our gray market and counterfeit space, the challenges that we have in that area. And we actually built the platform from the ground up that actually represents what we as an enterprise would need in order to consume the technology. So how do you drive it to scale? How do you make it simple and efficient? How do you integrate into existing systems? How do you get performance? And so we've kind of come up with a platform that we think kind of addresses enterprise needs. And the proof point is we have it's globally deployed today. We have 100 million documents within 50 million assets that are being tracked readily in real time around the world. And we're actually able to prove value because we're actually able to seize counterfeit gray market products en route to customers. So the return is there. It's still early,
Right.
but I think it's a very interesting kind of approach that we've been taking.
It seems like scalability is the key.
Scalability is the key. Scalability, interoperability, driving standards. I think interoperability will be the kind of the Achilles heel in the blockchain space. If we can't figure that out, this space is probably going to take a lot longer to mature. So as we look at that, interoperability is going to be absolutely the most critical thing. And we believe that the blockchain space will evolve very much in the way that the internet has. It is a collection of networks through which there are common standards and protocols and interfaces that allows data to move freely between all these different networks. Blockchain, we're seeing the exact same story play out. The key enabler in both the internet and blockchain is interoperability.
All right, well, thank you very much for joining us at MarketSite.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.